set up. You got your light?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Is it not good?
No, you're fine. I'm just double checking.
Yeah, I can. It's got there's different settings. Is that one better?
Whichever one's the brightest one.
Okay.
For you.
I look like a ghost. You look cool. You got your cool background.
All right. It's the end of the O.J. Simpson era. We're going to talk about why that's important to people that are over the age of 40. And we're going to debut a new segment on a new show called I Saw It on the Internet. Cue up our intro.
Iller and Filthier, take 1.
Hey, Brian.
So, what are you doing, man?
Well, I sat back and thought about the things we used to do. We had a lot of fun.
You really want to do this with me?
Bro, you know I do.
I'm digging the intro, Greg.
It's nice, right?
I think you guys did a really good job on that. It's the Iller and Filthier Show, the premiere episode. Episode number 1. Greg and I are both here, did a little planning, and decided let's just throw caution to the wind and get that first episode done.
That's right.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. No, intro sounds good.
I think it's brick by brick building this foundation for a new show. It's going to take a little bit of time, but at some point we have to do the first episode and run through some of our ideas that we've had.
Yeah.
And
a lot of ideas.
What was it? Just a few days ago, you were like, you sent me a text message in the middle of the day with just an O.J. Simpson picture. And you were like, dude. And I was at a photo shoot when I got it.
It ties back to college. It ties back to when we met. I mean, it goes back, and I just realized there's so many ways that like that trial and stuff crossed paths in my life. There was a huge trial here in our little town of Hudson that the verdict came out the same day that OJ died. And it just like, we were all kind of like on our pins and needles waiting to see what was going to happen. And I'm like, it just brought back so many memories.
Up in Hudson, Wisconsin, correct?
Hudson, Wisconsin. Yep.
Just so that people can profile us and see, as we're talking about O.J. Simpson and obviously all the things that come about with that. And I am Brian. Did I already introduce us or no? I'm Brian Simatros, one of your hosts.
Greg Eisenhower, host 2.
My new co-host for the new show, Iller and Filthier. So we're going to talk about O.J. Simpson. And again, it is the closing of an era, however you perceive that. And I think it really, it has affected people over the age of 40 a lot more than it is the people under 40.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that, I think people under 40, they don't know, they don't really care, and all they think about with O.J. Simpson is what they see on social media when he's living a pretty good life, golfing. You know, when you're younger, you have no idea. I mean, the trial, the murders, that was all what year was that? Do you remember?
So the murders happened in 94 and the trial was 10 months long in 1995. It started in January and wrapped up in October. So a 10-month long, like, had America. I was reading stuff today, like they said they projected like the America lost like $350 million of that time because of people like either not working or like watching the trial, like just crazy numbers.
But that was a time before social media. Yep. And literally that's something that would capture and captivate the entire nation, the entire country. Everybody was watching on a select few news stations that would cover it. I don't remember specifically what was around back in 93, 94, 95. Now I do remember. So let's kind of timestamp.
You want me to take you back? Yeah.
Where we were. So let's go back to the murder real quick. And this isn't necessarily, this isn't a crime podcast or anything like that.
Oh, it's not? Hold on. I gotta change my notes.
I saw you had a ton of notes that you took for this show.
Yeah.
But this was just a unique experience that kind of bookends with the death of OJ this past week, that Greg and I, we were really in the same place when this all kind of took place at the University of Missouri, when it came to the verdict coming out. And I think we might have been actually in the same building and not known about it.
Yeah.
But what was the year that, like, the murder and then the Bronco chase?
Yeah, fall of 94. So the chase would have been 94. So let's go back. Let's start there. I think that's a good place to start, is like set the scene for people that don't know or don't know. Like, remember, but like you said, this is pre-social media. This was kind of the first time anybody cut to a live streaming. This was the first time you saw like cameras following an event. So it was June 17th, 1994. Arnold Palmer is playing the last round of the US Open. So that's important because, he's obviously one of the most famous golfers ever, right? And him and OJ used to do commercials together. Let's back up even further. OJ at this time was like, I wrote down today, the closest thing I could think of was like The Rock or Peyton Manning. So he was in commercials, he was in movies, he was all over TV, he was doing football sideline broadcasting, he was in Naked Gun at the time, was one of the funniest movies in its era. So this guy was like out there. And again, I heard somebody say The Rock the other day as a good example of this guy that kind of crossed over from sports into movies. And so if you think about this, he was popular, right? And
he was commercially likable.
Yes.
And let's just peel back just a little bit. As a black athlete, widespread, commercially likable.
Yep. So him and Arnold Palmer were buddies. They used to do commercials together. So Arnold Palmer is playing the last round of the U.S. Open. The New York Rangers, this is all the same day, are in the Stanley Cup. They had won the Stanley Cup, and they're doing their parade in New York. It's Game 5 of the NBA Finals between the Rockets and Knicks. They went to split coverage. So it was the first time, so the NBA Finals are on, and they're showing the chase. And King Griffey
Bronco chase on the highway in California.
Because that's where it starts. And King Griffey Jr. tied Babe Ruth for the most home runs before the age of 30. All this happened on the same day. There's actually a documentary called 6/17/94 because of this. So all these things are happening, and they cut away. And I believe it was even Bob Costas is involved in this, but they cut away and they show this Bronco being chased by cops. And when we say chased, I believe they were going like 30 miles an hour. That's kind of the joke. And it's Al Cowlings, who Al Cowlings was OJ's best friend.
Right.
And was also a former football player, probably, less known, but at the time, he'd played in the league. He's driving the Bronco, and in the back, OJ's in the back, and Al Cowlings is talking to the police saying, I got OJ in the back. He wants to kill himself because he's the prime suspect of this horrible murder. I mean, it was so his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and Ron Goldman, who's a friend of hers.
Right.
I mean, brutal murder. Like, I mean, the whole thing of this is just awful. But so yeah, again, you're talking nobody had seen this before. Live footage were and then you get into like the dynamics. How long did you live in LA, Brian?
I was in LA until about 88.
So you were 10-ish, or
I was about 12. I was about 12 or so when we moved from LA or whatever. So when this kicked off on TV and I'm watching this highway chase of a white Bronco on the freeway that we used to drive all the time. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And everybody is watching, and like all the details that you're saying, and about Al Cowlings calling and talking to the police, all of that information is getting relayed somehow to the news people, who are then relaying it as they're talking over the helicopter footage. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's there's scenes of the scenes you can find on the internet are just amazing. Like, I mean, there's 50 police cars behind him. They're all just, and this went on for a long time. I believe this chase, I mean, again, they were driving really slow. It went on for a long time, and all the news people picked it up. I mean, it was the first thing you heard is like, wow, OJ Simpson's, on a chase with the police. Basically what Al Cowlings was trying to do is, like he said, he wants to turn himself in safe. He was a little scared, obviously he was like freaked out by everything, and he was just trying to make sure OJ was going to be safe. And they, and stepping back even further, I mean, at this time, and again, I've watched a ton of documentaries on this that they're fantastic. Some of them are really good, but he was a very well-known person in like wherever he lived, which I think was like Beverly Hills, whatever, this nice,
Brentwood.
very white Brentwood part of LA. I mean, again, Brian and I aren't here to talk about, I mean, race is going to come up, but I mean, what we're saying is like, this was a very well-known, like white upscale area. And OJ had all white friends. I mean, those were just known things. I mean, and
there's
so
there's certain cards we're going to have to put on the table. And again, we're not here to kind of forensic files the whole thing, but we're just kind of setting the table for why the O.J. Simpson death and the end of this era and everything that O.J. Simpson was responsible for kicking off down the road, whether it's the Kardashians and Bruce Jenner and all that stuff.
Everything.
Does this all come from this particular incident? Yeah. But race is a huge issue on this. Yeah. And the thing that you have to keep in mind here is prior to this happening, and Greg has kind of hinted at it as he's been talking and setting up like how commercially accessible and friendly O.J. Simpson is. So that's kind of a dog whistle, right? You guys are knowing where I'm going with this. O.J. Simpson wasn't part of this was explained to me several times by a lot of my friends back in the early 90s when we were trying to break down this whole thing. O.J. Simpson had essentially turned his back on the black community. So his whole thing was, it was all, making a lot of money, famous athlete, and very much a lot of white friends. And the thing that kind of is wonky as the case goes on and as the verdict comes on is then all of a sudden you see a complete switcheroo of white people turning on him and then black people supporting him.
Is during the chase, he's, like you said, they're going down LA highways. So 6 lanes of freeway blocked, white Bronco followed by 20 police cars. I can't find the picture. I had it saved. But there becomes like, as people are starting to become aware of this because of the news, there's people starting to gather along the bridges and Spade, and they're cheering him on. Right. Because again, I mean, he's very popular at this time.
Because you're coming on the backside of gangster rap out in LA. NWA was very big. NWA with Fuck the Police and all that stuff. So there's very much of an anti-police sentiment within certain communities there in LA as the Broncos going through the freeway. So then, because everybody's watching this on TV and you're seeing it go under the underpasses and everything, everybody started gathering around and cheering him on from getting away from the cops. And it looked just like a music video. You've got the one white car and you've got 20 or 30
There it is.
police cars behind him. That's an NWA video right there.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah, for sure. And to your point, where was the Rodney King in all of this? It was before this, right? The Rodney King and some of the riots had already happened, right?
The Rodney King was before, wasn't it? Like 92 or something? I don't know exactly.
But that's what you have to understand with this trial is a lot of this. The LA police versus the African American community goes back, I believe, way into like the Watts, right? Like way back into like the 60s. Like there's a deep seated
lot of issues,
between
in a lot of cities, but specifically LAPD
LA, and to your point, you've got all the rap coming out. I mean, that's legit stuff, right? I mean, that they're not just making this up. So that exists, and so you did have this. When you see this image, I mean, like you said, you start seeing people gathered on bridges. I mean, they were behind this guy, right? Like, they were like, "Oh, he didn't do it."
But see, that's what I struggle with, and that's what I've asked a lot of my friends back in the day, and I don't know necessarily if it was they were cheering OJ on,
right,
as much as they were cheering against the LAPD.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of different things that it's a hard conversation to have with complete strangers because there's so many different dog whistles and it's a minefield of what you go through.
Yeah.
And you talk about, when you get into the trial and everything, and the whole idea of our justice system, which I do think is one of the best that you can put together. It's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job. I mean, you can argue that if whatever, but the whole idea is you have to be proven guilty of something, right?
Right.
So there is a possibility that somebody could be guilty of something, but the prosecution just doesn't do the job.
That is correct.
You just don't get the right mix of jury people and things can happen. But I think in the long run, percentage wise, our justice system gets it right more often than not, which I know some people are like, well, then that's not good enough because you got to be close to 100%.
But you're trusting. I mean, and this goes down. I mean, we're jumping ahead here, but I mean, I watched, like I said, there's a really good documentary that ESPN did, 30 for 30. They did a 5 or 6 part series on this. And one of the episodes completely focuses on the jury basically saying what you said. It was them against the LAPD and had nothing to do with OJ. There was people on that jury that said, it had nothing to do with him. And to your point, like the facts of the case, they just felt there was enough like shenanigans going on.
Well, that's a great defense team and some bungled prosecutorial mishaps that I think he's guilty. I think he had an involvement in it. I know I'm kind of dancing there. Do I think he's the actual one that killed him or not? I think he was involved. I don't know. I don't know all the details, and I've forgotten a lot of the details.
Yeah.
But again, we're not here we're not arguing the case.
Yeah. It
was the perfect storm of race entering into it and this distrust and hate of the LAPD and a justice system that isn't 100% to where it does give you, there's just some things that can happen within a trial to where, okay, you may have a dirty cop, a racist cop, what do you do? Who's a big part of the prosecution, and then they find out that he had some racist background. Prosecution, and then they find out that
Hold on.
he had some racist.
Yeah, it's if we step back to the very end of the chase. So the chase goes on for hours.
Right.
They end up back at OJ's house, and Al Cowlings, his buddy, had basically like convinced the police, hey, he's going to turn himself in. When he drove into his driveway, there was so many people outside, like hundreds lined up. I mean, it was like a parade. He drove in through, but the police, they'd worked out a deal with the police to turn himself in the back of his house. So, you could tell he had privileges, right? Like, I mean, they didn't.
Well, as money affords.
Yeah.
Money affords
exactly.
you a certain privilege that most people don't. And that's, again, within the black community. And why is it different with OJ? It's because he had money.
Yeah. He had golfed with these guys. Like, I mean, in the trial, I mean, all this stuff came out. You can find all this stuff online. But yeah, he had been out. Many of these guys, golfed with, events with, things like that. So, I mean, he was buddies with a lot of these guys. But if you skip forward to the trial, you've got, like you said earlier, you hit on something that's really interesting, is like the prosecution was handed this case that felt like a slam dunk. And it was all about DNA. And that's what I was reading about today. The DNA evidence so the other thing I want to say here is, so you have this cast of characters. This trial, Judge Ito, who became famous, and honestly, I got to say, Saturday Night Live during this era was on fire a lot because of this case. Because, I mean, they had people playing OJ. They were just in heaven with like having so much content.
Well, that and Norm Macdonald also
just
created some issues himself, because
Yes,
he
he did.
relentlessly went after OJ to the
He
point
did.
to where Lorne Michaels was like, you need to knock it off.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the DNA and all of that, this became Judge Ito decided to make this allow TV coverage. So again, going back to college, I watched this.
Yep.
I mean, it was like court. It was like the first rendition of court TV or something,
Right.
like, or Cops. I mean, like I said, this was like the beginning of what we now view as completely normal. Like, how many, you turn on the news now and there's 14 videos of cars, hey, check
Right.
this car, watch, they flew off the, this was the start of this.
This was a cooler version of soap opera.
Yeah, it really was. You had, intrigue because you've got this famous person, and then you've got all this DNA. DNA. This is the first time they were talking about DNA, and one of the lawyers on his team was a DNA specialist. So the prosecution thought they had a slam dunk case, right? And then, like you said, OJ hired the dream team of. They called them that, right? Didn't they call them
They were the top attorneys.
Ridiculous
that anybody could get.
And in the trial, they just picked apart everything the prosecution did, everything the police did, and it came down to almost stuff away. They took all the focus away from the case and just pointed at different directions. Pointed at different things. So
Which is what a defense attorney is supposed to do, right? And that's allowed within the justice system, the legal system that we have. And here we are again saying, there's many different outcomes. You can be innocent and found not guilty. You could be innocent and found guilty. You could be guilty and found guilty, or you could be guilty and found not guilty.
So, like you mentioned something earlier, let's go through the dream team, because this cast of characters that we're showing here, right? You've got, this became like, they became characters. Like, people were playing them on Saturday Night Live. Like, you have characters, starting with Robert Kardashian, the start of the Kardashian empire. Kris Jenner,
who's not on here. He's not on the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kris Jenner was Nicole's best friend. So, you're talking Robert Kardashian was OJ's best man when he married Nicole. So you've got already the Kardashians are, I think, only known because of this. To your point earlier, Brian, is like, I don't know, do they become who they are if their name's not out
genesis
there?
of where they're at now is from this trial.
Yeah, because he was on the case. You got F. Lee Bailey, who was this old crotchety. He's not on this picture either, but he was an old, guy that had been in lots of trials. Johnny Cochran. They brought Johnny in. Johnny became the main guy, and he had all these goofy catchphrases. Marsha Clark, I mean, people were giving her shit about her hair so much that she showed up with a new hairdo halfway through the trial because people were commenting. It's almost like it was almost like social media before it existed. Like in today's work, they would, can you imagine it today? Like if this happened.
Well, but it's everything that we saw that unfolded there and all the side stories have come up in every other high profile case since then. John Benet Ramsey going forward to who's the girl, the mom that killed her daughter, who was found innocent, Casey Anthony.
Yeah.
So and it's these side stories that become bigger than the story itself, and then it becomes so convoluted with things to where the jury then finds one item somewhere that they're able to say beyond a reasonable doubt. There's some doubt. So if that's the case, then
correct,
not guilty.
It does come down to the wording, and that's exactly what they did. The defense team put the doubt in the jurors. It started with just the mishandling of evidence. I always talked about it like if you think of your job, right? So like, let's say you start a job. I started a new job recently, and it's like, okay, to do this, you do these 10 things, right? And then it's like, as you get better at it, you're like, okay, I can skip step 7, like, I feel like that's what happened in this case. Is like the prosecution and police were questioned on how they handling the bloody glove, right? They find this bloody glove and they're questioned on how they handled it. And so again, that's the defense taking away like the fact that there's this bloody glove that has OJ's DNA on it, but it's like, oh, but they didn't do the right steps, like.
But that's part of the rules of the game.
Yes.
In that the prosecution and the cops that were out there investigating, they have to be 100% all the time. They can't make a mistake, because if they do and the defense finds out, whether or not your client is innocent or guilty, the prosecution's always has to be 100%.
Yeah.
So then that's where you're like, well, if you're on the prosecution side of things, or you're a cop or something, somebody's guilty, let's say, that's where you start getting into some gray areas of, well, I know he's guilty. Is there something that you can kind of tip the scale or something? I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that happens. Yeah. The gray area happens.
Yeah.
And the first thing, going back to what you had hinted before and where it started to fall apart, was Mark Furman. On that picture that you had was the lead cop there, the lead detective or whatever.
He's the one that found the glove at OJ. So there was, so some of you, if you don't know the story, they found like a hat, a glove, there was blood on the Bronco. I mean, there's just everything pointing, but yeah, Mark Furman is the one who found some of this evidence back at OJ's house.
And it just so happened
he's a white supremacist.
So there you go. So there it could be OJ Simpson's guilty. He did it. And Mark Furman is a white supremacist.
But was doing it. Yeah.
Or it could be enough doubt that, well, if there's a white supremacist that was the first person there that would plant a glove. So therefore, everything that the prosecution, this is where there was so much that went wrong for the prosecution, and why people are like, how could a lot of people are like, well, how could OJ be found not guilty? But I think, and you tell me, you haven't said yet. I think he's guilty and responsible, and I guess that's more of the civil trial later on that he was found guilty of, that he was responsible for their deaths.
Yeah.
But on the criminal side of things, he was found not guilty. What do you think?
I agree. I think for years I've assumed he was guilty. I think he got off on, to your point, like we said, the shadow of a doubt. The defense created the shadow of the doubt and made the jury question that he did it. I mean, even to this day, I mean, I think there's still, even today, I read something about Nicole's best friend, Faye Dunaway, I think.
Was it Faye Resnick? She posed
Faye
for
Resnick.
Playboy.
Yeah. So she had a crazy drug problem, went to rehab 3 days before the murder, and some people say that maybe she owed a bunch of money, and that this maybe Colombian hitman came in and did this, and the cutting of the neck was like a signal. And I was just telling Rachel earlier, I'm like, maybe that's true. I mean, maybe it was, and they set him up. Maybe they were like, oh, this will be so easy. We just make it look like OJ did it. Because we should also say, like, OJ, one of the factors in this case is that they had some domestic disputes.
All the time. She was calling 911 all the time.
He had beat her before. So he's not a good guy. Regardless of guilty or not guilty, he's not a good dude. There's pictures of her all beat up. And sure, there's two sides to every story. But yeah, the cops knew this was a common thing. And it happened more than once. So that's a part of this story, is that there was domestic past. But yeah, I do. I mean, I just don't see there's not enough out there to say what else could have happened. Like,
but so you think he's guilty, but then do you also see why the jury found him not guilty?
Yeah, 100%.
And so then
because the prosecution didn't do a good job. Period. I mean, I think
right.
They coasted. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's that. Or are we being assholes about it? I don't know.
No, I think like anything. Again, going back to some documentaries I've watched, one of the things they talked about is in this Brentwood area, you're talking about this prosecution team wasn't equipped and ready for a case like this. Like, they're saving cats and trees, and now you've got a double murder. You know what I mean? Like, they were outmatched by a superstar. I mean, it's like Mizzou basketball taking on like the dream team. Like, you know, like, I mean, it's like that. I mean, they were overmatched.
And you're seeing like the picture you have up right here with the gloves. And I think that's probably the most iconic thing coming out of the case is the gloves. And the gloves. If it doesn't, what's the famous phrase?
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And so this was a move by the prosecution they found isotoner gloves at the scene that had blood on them, and they had the same size, and there was this pivotal day in court where they asked OJ to try on the gloves, and Marcia Clark did not want to do this, and Chris Darden, her partner, wanted to. It was a total backfire because, first of all, I mean, OJ's an actor, right? Like, he's in movies, so he's all like, oh, these don't fit. Like, he pretended like they were super tight, and
he had gloves on underneath.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it was later found out that his attorneys later told that they told him not to take his arthritis medicine so that his hands would swell up, which is brilliant.
Classic
on the defensive side of things. Right. And that's why they make a ton of money.
And OJ yells out, they don't fit. And so Johnny Cochran, and this is his thing, he turns around and goes, if the gloves don't fit, you must acquit.
Right.
And that became like the slogan of the trial.
And that, I think, is the iconic thing that came out of the trial. And I mean, just absolutely just awful for Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman.
Yeah.
And
their family, the Goldmans became part of this crew too. Like these people. Like the dad and his wife, Ron Goldman, who's Nicole's best friend, who is this really handsome model looking guy, looked a little bit like Brian and I, but just more handsome. His family was there, and his dad, they would be crying every day.
They never ended up really getting justice other than the civil trial where they got some money from it. But to think that we can read into so many different things on this, and this could be like a 7-hour podcast, and we probably have like 10 minutes left, and then we're going to do
I think we should go for the 7 hours.
But it's one of those things where, okay, even if you're OJ, and let's say he didn't do it and he's completely innocent, the fact that this happened and he lives the rest of his life just like, man, I guess we'll never know. We'll never know.
So one of their
kids.
Yeah, he's got several kids. Because that's what that came up earlier. Is his oldest son was actually considered a suspect for a bit.
Yeah, that was floated out there too. That his older son is the one that did it. OJ's covering for him. Yeah, which
so it's crazy. So the other thing I can't go through this podcast without mentioning Kato Kalin. And I don't know if we have a picture of him, but he was legendary too. He was staying in OJ's house the night of the murders, so he was obviously questioned.
Right.
He's this stoner looking, long blonde hair, like actor guy.
Right.
And again, I talk about this because this story has circled through my life. So his name was Kato Kalin. He became famous. He's got he does like radio shows and stuff still. He's only famous because of this. But he testified because, do we have a picture of him?
I'm sure we can find one or pull it up.
He's only famous because he was OJ's house guest. He lived in OJ's house and he heard noises that night. And where he heard noises behind the wall where he was staying is where they found the bloody glove.
Right.
So it's all tied together. But when I lived in Florida, after my wife and I split up, that's another podcast. We can do that another time.
That's a whole nother podcast.
If my kids are listening, I'm sorry if you don't know that story, but they do. So I lived with this dude who bought a house, and all the guys that we ran around with called me Kato. So my nickname was Kato for like 3 years.
I can kind of see,
which is hilarious because I was the house guest. Like,
well, it's interesting that and I found the picture of Kato. So
it's my guy.
It's interesting that you said that, and this ties into when you texted me when he died that day, and I was at a photo shoot, and I was shooting.
Because Brian's not a model; he's a photographer.
No, I'm behind the other side of the camera, but I was shooting some young ladies that were in their early 20s, let's say. So when this broke, I was getting all my gear set up, and they were talking about OJ Simpson, and of course they're like, well, what did he used to do? What was this and that? So again, this is why I said that it's an end of an era. Yeah. For people 40 and over, but people 40 and under, they don't really understand. And so when they were talking, the one girl who brought the information that O.J. Simpson had died had mentioned that O.J. killed his wife and that pool guy. And so they're mixing up Ron Goldman with Kato Kalin.
Kato was awesome.
So let's talk about real briefly the verdict.
Yeah,
that's the big thing here that brings you and I kind of together. So the verdict when it happened was what year?
October 95.
And where exactly were you when the verdict was being read? Do you remember?
I was in an alley in Columbia. And I'm smoking this bit. Oh no, you didn't mean like specifically. Like, no, I'm just kidding. So I remember being on campus. To your point, I was at the bookstore,
the Student Union bookstore.
The Student Union, And again, this is pre-social media, cell phone stuff. So like everybody had gathered, and there was this big gathering, and it was probably the first time I felt like a racial tension.
Yeah.
I mean, there was, that's the thing about college. I mean, you got everybody there, right? And so like everybody,
and a lot of times that's
pulled
the
in.
first experience a lot of people have of seeing other different people
nationality,
than what they grew up with.
for sure, 100%.
And I was at the student union also. I was there. We didn't know, I think, of each other yet, but we were both in that same room.
Yeah, it must have been in the afternoon, and it was in between classes or something. But we all piled in. There was a lot of people. I don't know how many, but it was pretty. I feel like it was shoulder to shoulder.
Oh, it was packed, and they rolled out the TV. It was like a 32-inch TV on a cart.
With 32 inches deep, also, for those of you that don't remember flat screens.
And if you remember, Greg, it was one side of the student union. All the black people were on one side, and all the white people were on the other side.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was interesting. And then, like, they read the verdict and said he was not guilty. And, like, you just heard a lot of cheers, and you heard a lot of people go, like, sigh. And, like, it was...
Like, oh, I can't believe it.
Yeah. It was crazy. Like, I mean, it was so the funny part is my buddy Pete, you remember Pete, my roommate Pete. So Pete and I, to this day, this goes back to 95. To this day, we still joke about this. When we were walking together, we left the student union and went towards the library, and there was that, can't remember what the building is right there, but this big African-American dude just blows the door open. And he's like, OJ's free, just yells it across. And Pete and I just bust out laughing. I don't know why it was so funny, but for 20 years, we've joked, we've always said OJ free to each other just because of the way he said it. So when he died a couple of days ago, we both text each other that. I said, OJ's finally free.
What the guys I used to play basketball with, and I asked them.
The 7-foot twins?
Not the Haley twins. I would ask them because I'm always I always like to ask the questions that people are kind of awkward to ask, and I was fortunate that I could bounce around different groupings of people or whatever. Sometimes people don't quite know what I am, so I can fit in with people that look like Greg, or sometimes I'm fitting in with people that don't speak English or whatever, and I'd love it.
Do you have the Kool-Aid jersey at that time?
But what was told to me was it didn't matter whether he was innocent or guilty. That was a win for black people. Yeah. And I'm like, and I would say, but does it? Of all the cases that you could stick your feather in and be like, yeah, that's the one.
You pick this
You're
one.
picking this one to rally behind.
Yeah.
And the odd thing is, even after that, going on up until recently, I don't know anybody, white or black, that they're like, oh, OJ is innocent. Right.
Yeah. I watched the Steve Harvey thing the other day talking about it. It was an old comedy bit, stand up, of him just being like, he did it. It was just a funny bit. So this would have been, so that happened in what do we say, 95. So in 2004-ish, 2003, 2004, I'm in Las Vegas. My buddy Steve Moberly, shout out Steve. We're in the top of the Ghost Bar in the Palms, having a fun night, me and some buddies. And we're sitting up there, crowded, this cool top, really cool bar. And my buddy and I are hanging out, and he gets bumped, turns around, kind of like, you got bumped. He's not mad, but he turns around. It's OJ Simpson and his posse.
Really?
And he's not very tall, first of all.
What, wasn't it in Vegas where OJ got arrested for stealing his Heisman stuff back?
Yeah, he was trying to. After that, once he got acquitted, dude, he just lived his life. I saw. Yeah, the documentaries are hilarious. They're like, he's at the gas station talking to his white friends, like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And they're just like, don't want anything to do with it.
I mean, the last 10 years, he's on, I don't know if it's TikTok or Twitter, and he's on hey, I'm getting ready for a big Super Bowl party. Having a good time. Hope you all are well. I mean, and I think over time, people just don't care.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that the families of Ron Goldman and what's his wife's name?
Nicole Brown
Simpson and her family. It's just like it I don't know. But again, to wrap all this up, and then we'll get into our new segment. I without this trial and without OJ and all this stuff going on, you don't get the Kardashians. You don't get the Kim Kardashian video.
Oh, that would suck.
You
So funny enough, there is a picture of Kim when she's born that I heard people say looks exactly like OJ, because there was rumors that like OJ and Chris had like a thing.
of Chloe, not Kim.
Oh, is it? Okay. I'm
Yeah.
not good with names. Okay.
Chloe's
So
the one that people always say looks kind of like OJ, and she addressed. Not that I'm a Kardashian person,
whatever.
but I've
love 'em.
seen enough clips, and I saw the one where she addressed that, and I think she was kind of pissed about people assuming that she had features more of OJ than anything else. And then they talked about like they did a 23andMe DNA like within the family. I mean, that could all be bullshit too.
Yeah.
But so many things have come about because of this.
Yeah. And I'd like to wrap up with this. As a Chiefs fan, like nobody likes the Bills. So I just want to I'm just going to read this. So reminder, the Buffalo Bills barely lost a game in 1970 by missing on a bad pass for a touchdown. The loss allowed them to get the first pick in the draft, where they took O.J. Simpson. O.J. lived in Buffalo, where he met his wife, Nicole, and then allegedly killed her. He then hired Robert Kardashian to be his lawyer. They won the case, making Kardashian somewhat famous. Then Kim drops the sex tape and becomes famous. So basically, the 1970 Buffalo Bills are the reason we have to deal with the Kardashians today. Because if they would have won the game, they wouldn't have had the pick that took OJ. So he would have never met Nicole, thus never had a chance to kill her, preventing the entire Kardashian family from ever being a silver of a subject in modern culture. Damn you, Buffalo Bills. That was from my friend Scott. Classic.
That's it's just funny, the whole butterfly effect, right? You just don't know what changes or whatnot. But I mean, an interesting take, and that's kind of why Greg and I wanted to talk about the OJ Simpson thing, not because, again, I mean, we kind of got into some of the details of the forensics and the case and stuff like that, but more just to kind of set up just the whole story of this. And it was just funny that when that verdict was read, Greg and I, who didn't know each other right at the time, we were in the exact same room, experienced the exact same thing. And now it's all done.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, it's all done. He's dead, and we'll probably never know. So you want to do
Did he write a book?
The If I Did It book? He had the book and that TV special.
This is the last thing I'm going to say about him.
Yeah.
Like, dude, when you like get off of double murder by like some clauses, like you just go to Mexico and like disappear. Like, you don't taunt us with these books and like, if I done
he needed the money, and he's a
right.
celebrity whore.
Yeah.
He's
right.
used to people liking him being in front of the camera, and he can't help himself.
Yeah. I hear you.
So, anyways,
one of the reasons we wanted to talk about it is like it just makes me think of Mizzou. I mean, that's where we met.
It does.
Yeah,
ironically,
it all circles
sadly
back.
enough.
Yeah. To when Brian and I were on a rollerblading skate team and stuff. It just like
we have a lot of memories that we can get into. We might do that one day, like all the secrets of Mizzou that nobody knows about. That I think a lot of people will not want us to say. But
60s were awesome.
Let's transition into
a new segment.
New segment. again, Greg hits it out of the park with the jingles on our show, right?
Yeah, I found myself a niche. It turns out I'm good at jingles.
So this is called I saw it on the internet, and this is one to where we present Greg with something that I have come across on the internet, on social media. If you guys are on social media like I am pretty much every day, you come across things and you're like, what the fuck is this? And sometimes you have nobody to talk to about it. And so I am fortunate now to have a co-host to where when I come across something kind of interesting, I can present this to Greg. So this is going to be a segment that we're trying out on the premiere episode of Iller and Filthier today.
We're just trying it out.
We're trying it out. We'll see.
Boyfriend was secretly taking photos of my mother and storing them in a private album on his phone. And something really disturbing happened yesterday in relation to this whole entire madness. So if you think that's bad enough, oh, it's about to get worse. And let this story be a lesson to you girls. If you have any weird suspicions or gut feelings, just go through your man's phone. Also, no hate to my mom. She is completely innocent in all of this. She had no idea this was going on. So I decided to go through my ex-boyfriend's phone because I just had a sneaking suspicion. And honestly, at this point, I wish I would have found that he was talking to girls because that would have been so much better than what I actually found. Went through his entire phone, I found nothing, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. This guy is a saint. But then it hit me. You know what? If there's any secrets, they might be in his photo album. So then, right before I locked his phone, I went straight to his albums, and what do I see? I see an album with a cover photo that's my mother in a bathing suit. I realized this is a photo from one of our family vacations. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is like a family vacation album. No, because the album was labeled for personal use. And when I clicked on it, it was literally just photos of my mom that he had taken like incognito. You could tell she was completely unaware that her photo was being taken. I found this out. I sat on it for like a couple weeks because I was truly shocked. I didn't know what to do and I wasn't ready to break up with this man, but eventually I did. But I never called him out on it. And the other day I made a TikTok about this and I haven't heard from this guy in so long and honestly made peace with the fact that I would never speak with him again. I blocked this guy literally everywhere a person could be blocked. But this little weasel sent me an email yesterday. You are not going to believe what the email said. I'm going to save this for part 2. Let me know your thoughts.
All right, Greg. I've got a couple questions for you, but I just want your overall use. If you come across something like this, what's going through your head here after watching that?
Oh man, I just want to I want to run if I'm that guy.
This is the stuff that content wise we're competing against.
Yeah,
and I have a hard time when I come across this stuff nowadays where I'm like, I think it's all bullshit. I mean, it's so perfectly presented. And of course it gets over that 1 minute mark to where now she's monetized once she gets over the 1 minute. And then she gets to the end where there's a part 2 that you're going to have to go see.
Yeah.
But let's just say this is all true.
Right. Man, that is tough. I mean, is she hot? First of all, like,
okay, number one, I knew you were going to probably say that, and that's what the comment section was. Can we see a picture of her mom?
Yeah, that's man. It's weird because I've never been in that. I looking back, I'm like, there's nobody's mom. I don't think I would have wanted to take pictures of. I mean, that's the first thing. It's like, wow, that's kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, that feels like clickbait for sure.
But we're going to assume that it's real, that it's an actual story. I can't say one way or the other. And the name of the creator was on there, so we're giving her credit for that. And then what are your thoughts on going through your significant other's phone? I'm curious about that, because that was another thing I thought this would be a good topic for us to talk about as well in this segment.
I think we all have like the urge to do that, but
do you?
I mean,
will you let Rachel go through your phone?
No.
And
I don't want
will she let you go through hers?
No, I'm just, yeah, of course. I think we both do.
Wait, you both do what?
We both share pictures of each other's moms. No, I'm just kidding. I think we would both share, be like, yeah, look through, I don't think we're
You
smart
haven't
enough.
done it, but you're saying you would.
Yes.
See, I think that's all bullshit.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, neither
You would
one of
let
us
you would
have-
let Rachel go through your phone like right now?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
say, hey, babe, go through my phone while I'm doing the podcast. I'll be gone an
Yeah.
hour. You have an hour to go
Yeah.
through my phone.
Yeah.
And then she would do the same thing, you think, for you?
Yeah. Yeah. We both would. I mean, we share like a Apple ID, so I mean, everything she does, I see anyway. So,
And do you have
that was
any desire? Let me ask you this question a different way. Do you have a desire to want to go through her phone?
I think it's an age thing. When we were younger, maybe I used to tell her that. I used to be like, so here's the thing about when you're married for a long time. I used to think like when we were like, when we had little kids and she'd go out, I used to think like, oh, she just wants to go hook up with somebody. Like, and then you realize like, that's not true at all. Like she literally just wants to get away from the freaking kids and like, just have a moment with her friends and relax. Same way we do, like when buddies go out or, it's like, you realize then you get older and you're like, you realize that's all just like, why was I worried about any of that? There's nobody's going out to like, just get some guy's going to grab her and take her in the bathroom, like again, but I think when we were younger, I felt that way. And when you get older, you don't think like that. And so, yeah, I don't think either one of us would have a problem with each other looking through each other's phone.
But what about the question of, do you have a desire? Like if her phone was just out right now, would you go through it because you're curious?
I don't. I mean, I really don't. I mean, we leave each other's phones around. We don't have a reason to feel that way. So I think, but I understand the desire. Like I get that, like I get that desire. Like I think it's natural I think that's a natural thing in people is to be like, I want to look
insecure.
At this. Yeah, I think it's just a wonder, you know what I mean? Like because it does exist and you see it and you hear, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that's natural that people want to look. It's like I have a friend going through a separation, and I've been trying to tell him the same thing. He got really down on himself because he, one day was like, oh, I, followed her, looked up her, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm just like, dude, that's okay. I think that's a natural thing. You're going through something that's painful. I think that's natural that you would like look into that. You know what I mean? Like,
you didn't tell him that you saw her with her friend from the restaurant and
he
went and looked and went bat shit like OJ.
No, yeah, exactly. He didn't kill everybody. We don't know. But read his book if you guys want to know how he would have done it. I think Rachel and I are kind of unique in that way, but like, I mean, I understand the need for wanting to look. Like if it was sitting there like, oh, I'm gonna check this out. Like, 'cause you just never know, right? Like you never know what you're gonna find. Like,
well, and let's say if you were this guy,
yeah,
and let's just hypothetically say Rachel had a mom that was smoking hot, and you were taking pictures of your mom-in-law. Who's putting it just in their regular roll?
Yeah. No, I mean, for one, yeah, I'm getting another phone. I'm getting a burner phone. You got to be smart,
Well, we've got time to where she was teasing a part 2, and I know that we're all thinking, well, what did she have to say in part 2? So I went and got that one.
Boyfriend was secretly taking photos of my mother and storing them in an album on his phone labeled for personal use only. Yes, you heard that correctly. I made a TikTok exposing my ex-boyfriend, and I haven't talked to this guy in a long time. I never actually confronted him about the fact that he was like, I don't know, secretly in love with my mom and creeping on her during our family vacations. But I guess he saw my TikTok because even though he is blocked on literally everything, he found a way. They always find a way, girls. And he found a way through email. So he sent me an email yesterday. I'm going to read it to you guys, and I need to know your opinions and your thoughts, and I need you to let me know if I should just ignore this or if I should reply. Here goes.
Because she's getting the
Hi,
engagement.
Stephanie. I just want to wish you the best. I see all of your success online and that things are going well for you. A friend of mine sent a TikTok you made a couple of days ago. Yeah, sure. And I feel that this is about me. No, really? And so I wanted to give myself a chance to explain what really happened. See, I don't understand what more you could possibly explain. Like, what could be an actual legitimate reason for you having a private folder on your phone with photos of my mom labeled for personal use? Make it make sense. But guys, if you think that there is an explanation that you think could exist in reality, let me know in the comments. Anyway, then he ended it by saying, do you have any time this week to meet for a coffee or a drink? P.S. How is your mom? Just part 2 to...
So, again, I showed you that.
I think they're in on it.
And you see the engagement numbers, which are not crazy there at the time that I screen capped it, but they are crazy now. And it's like an account that gets quite a bit of engagement. And you see stuff like this all the time, whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And then we're going to put out our content and we're going to get, maybe 200 views here or there, 1 or 2 likes. And then we see something like this. How do we compete against stuff like this?
Yeah, I can't. I'm stuck on like the naming of the album. Like, that's the first mistake, right?
Of the private album?
Yeah. First of all, you don't ever name it like if I wrote a book called like If I Was Gonna Cheat.
Right. If I was hot for my wife's mom.
Yeah.
In a bikini. She did say, I think, a bikini too,
That's crazy. But yeah, I would be, I mean, you don't, first of all, you name it like golf clubs or something that my wife's like, oh, I'm not looking that out, just, something awful. Or
Star Wars comic books,
Yeah, Greg's favorite drums. You have to be way smarter. So first of all, they're dumb, both of them. And yeah, no, I think he's messing with her. Right? Is this this is a couple trying to be like, oh, this will be funny? Like,
well, if we're taking it for the truth or whatever, they're no longer together. I mean, I take it as all bullshit,
true.
But I'm to the point now to where most of the stories and most of the posts that I see of people saying certain things that happened to them today. I can't believe I was walking down the street and some guy slapped me on the butt or something. And I'm not discounting, like, that shit happens, right? But it's happening to hundreds of people on my particular timeline. I don't know. It's a fine line. I'm not discounting that stuff doesn't happen. Yeah. But there's a lot of stories and a lot of things. And I'm just like, everybody's just doing things for engagement.
Yeah.
And it's hard to kind of figure out, well, what's truthful or not. And then in the end, does it matter if it's truthful?
Does
she care?
No.
Do you care?
The cool thing is, like you said, like it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's like, how would the rest of us handle that?
Yeah.
That's such a great question. Like, it's a great topic.
But most of the engagement was, can we see a picture of your mom? When I first just got a hold of that video and I was scrolling and I saw it, and I was hooked within the first 10 seconds. More of, I was like annoyed, but I was already thinking of things that I wanted to present to you for the show. So I was like, well, I'm going to listen to this all the way through.
Yeah.
And the first thing that came to my mind before I ran to the comment section there was, I know there's 99% are going to be guys asking for pictures of the mom. But this girl got exactly what she wanted. She got the engagement.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. But yeah, that's a tough one. You just got to be smarter.
All right. Well, this was the very first episode of Iller and Filthier, talking a little bit of OJ and that era coming to a close, and then debuting a new segment of I Saw It on the Internet. Greg, you got anything to say to we had up to like, I think 7 or 8 listeners or viewers while we were on live tonight. You got anything you want to tell them before we sign off?
I just want to apologize that you guys wasted your time. You could have been learning how to play piano. You could have been reading OJ's book on how he would have done it. I mean, so many things. And instead you watched us 2 idiots, but we appreciate it.
We do appreciate it. And going forward for the next, I would say, month or 2, you'll want to make sure that you're following not only Tossing Salad Podcast, because some of the content is still going to have to go through my channel here as we set up things for Iller and Filthier, but we need you to go and find us on all of the social media channels that we have our accounts set up on. And we're setting up, the avatars and getting all that stuff going. So we're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube as of tonight. I think we have an Iller and Filthier, and then even on Threads. So if you guys are on there, you guys are watching this, you guys want to hang out, go follow us there. And we're hoping every week, doing shows every week to where we're kind of recording these things live to where you guys can even have a part in seeing the behind the scenes or even being part of the show for the podcast. And to Dwayne Clausen said, congratulations on the premiere. Great job so far, Dwayne. We appreciate that. And we are signing off. Greg, I love you, man. And
thanks, buddy.
We will see you all next week.